It was the vote that divided the country, but Brexit also tore relationships apart.
Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine's new memoir delves into the fallout from that toxic Brexit campaign, including the impact it had on her very own marriage and friendships, going from karaoke nights and trips to Ibiza with the Camerons to being rejected from the Conservative inner circle. And Sarah Vine joins us now.
Morning.
Very good morning to you. It's a gripping book. I read it from cover to cover.
It's a quick read, isn't it?
It's I just think it's really interesting. Lots of people will go, oh, just put Brexit in the past.
I agree.
But research out this month did show that marriages were particularly at risk during the Brexit years. Friendships were, relationships were. You write about it yourself.
Well, I just wanted to sort of, you know, it's nearly 10 years. Can you believe it's going to be 10 years next year? Isn't that extraordinary? And all of this stuff's been swirling around in my head. And I also just wanted to draw a line under it. So I thought, you know, what I do is I write. That's how I make sense of the world. So I thought I'll write a book about it. So this is my contribution. And it's annoyed. I mean, I think quite a lot of people are cross with me, but then everyone's always cross with me anyway. But I just thought I'd do something honest. And I really wanted to write about because everyone's written the sort of political analysis of Brexit, which I think is fascinating. This is sort of the emotional analysis of Brexit. It's a different thing, really. So I wanted to write about the people and the emotions and the feelings and the fallout and all the mistakes that I made and all the things I would have done differently. And it's just kind of, it's my own sort of quite messy account of that period.
Thing is, though, I mean, is it really about Brexit? Because
not really, no, it's about...
Because your relationship with Michael Gove kind of breaks up some years after the Brexit
Yes,
vote.
I mean, that was COVID. I mean, I think COVID was bad for a lot of relationships too, wasn't it? So...
But then your relationship with Samantha Cameron and the Camerons actually starts to break down when Michael is sacked from,
yes, correct.
Moved from being Education Secretary to a lesser job with much less money. And there's a kind of a resentment and anger there in you, which kind of starts to boil.
So I mean, Brexit is part of it, but the arc is really how politics gets into people's souls and sort of hollows them out, really, and how friendships and allegiances that you think are kind of unbreakable, politics will break them, in the end. I mean, Ed, you've probably experienced a little bit of this, but maybe not quite so.
Well, it's interesting, because, of course, it's called How Not to Be Political Wife. And, of course, I'm sitting next to someone who is a...
Political wife.
Political wife. Yes, exactly. And eventually, politics destroyed your marriage to Michael Gove.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, and you are open about this in the book, how much gossip was there when you split up with Michael Gove about the fact that people went, oh, it's because he's actually not interested in women?
Oh, so much gossip. Everyone just assumed that was the reason. I mean, I have to say, Michael is... I write about this in the book. Michael is quite camp, but he's not gay. He's really not gay. Well, I mean, his relationship.
You would know.
I mean, I would like to say no, but maybe I don't. I mean, often people probably think, oh, poor sad Sarah, she doesn't realise. But I do. I mean, if you look at the amount of girlfriends he's had since he left politics, you know, there have been a few. So
he's certainly not demonstrating that he's not interested in women.
No, but I mean, even if he was gay, would it matter? I don't know. I'm not that bothered about that.
But you are bothered about the effect that politics has on relationships. Yeah. You broke up with your best friend Sam Camp.
Yeah.
You have not spoken to David Cameron again.
Well, I've said hello to him at various parks. One must be polite.
Yes, which doesn't really count.
Not in any meaningful way,
does it? No. And eventually it blew up your marriage.
Yeah.
How would you recommend anyone married goes into politics in the same way that lots of people say, I'd never let my other half go into Strictly?
Yeah.
Would you say, don't let your other half go into politics?
I think if you do, you have to have... you have to really sit down and think it through first, and we didn't do that. I had no concept of what politics was going to be like. I was completely naive. I thought, oh, it'll be fine. You know, I didn't really sort of... I genuinely didn't think it through at all. It was a bit like having a baby. I didn't really think that through either, but you know what it's like. You know, everyone can tell you what it is like, but then until you actually do it yourself, you've got no idea.
So you would say no?
I would probably say no on reflection, unless your children are grown up and you need a very strong family background. You need people who can really support you, who don't, who are invested in the project. That's the thing. That's what I would say. What do you think, Ed?
Can I ask you about?
What do you think, Ed?
About 26 years still going.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible to make it work, but everybody's different, and there are lots of people whose relationships break up, even if they're not being involved in politics and they've not been involved in Brexit. So that's just kind of the way it goes. In terms of the inside track you have, because you saw people from the inside, relationships from the inside. Boris Johnson, for example, was it obvious? Because Michael Gove kind of betrayed Boris Johnson in the weeks after the Brexit vote, stopped him being Prime Minister then. Was it obvious to you from early on that Boris Johnson would be the kind of Prime Minister he turned out to be?
Yes, I think he was. I think he was the Prime Minister I expected him to be. Yeah, I mean.
So when he resigned, you weren't surprised?
Not really. I think that when Boris is good, he's very, very good, and when he's bad, he's not. He's very, he's very uneven, and he can be absolutely brilliant, and then he can be less than brilliant. I quite like Boris. He's quite a human politician. I mean, as politicians go, he's quite honest and I think quite sort of himself, quite authentic.
I wonder if you can, because what's remarkable that people may not realise is that when you become a politician or you're involved in politics in the way that you were, people are vicious in a way that is kind of incomprehensible.
Well, Ed probably understands.
Only on your own side. I mean, not the opposition. The opposition, kind of, the opponents you deal with in a fairly... But on your own side, it can be terrible.
The more successful you become as a politician, the more vicious people are, because the more of a threat you are to them. So it's that weird thing that if in a normal job, if you do well, everyone goes, well done, and you get promoted. Whereas if you're a politician and you do well, everyone tries to bring you down because you're a threat.
And talking about promotion, I never got to do one of the top jobs. Never quite got there.
But you were education.
Yeah, but not home, foreign Prime Minister.
I would argue that education is probably one of the most important jobs because of,
But Michael also never got to one of the top jobs. Was that because others stopped him, or was there something about Michael which in the end stopped him getting there?
I have no idea. But you see, I think this notion of what are the top jobs in politics, well, you would say Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, Prime Minister, Chancellor. I think those ideas were formed in sort of 1879. I think the top jobs in politics are actually education and health. That would be my view. And if I could only ever be a really good health secretary, I would think I'd done a really good job. And
if you were health secretary, would you allow Ozempic?
Oh yes, what a good.
I know, do you like that one?
That's very skillful, yeah.
Because Mounjaro is now going to be
prescribed today on the NHS. Well, I mean, I'm a veteran of. I am a human Labrador, so my whole life I've fought against my enormousness, and I started taking fat jabs. Before they were even a thing that anyone knew about.
And are you still taking them?
I think I started them in 2018 when it was a daily called Saxenda. Because I went to see a man about a gastric band because I tried to lose weight, it kept coming back on, and I was like, I have an underactive thyroid and various other problems. So I went to see a nice man about a gastric band. He said, for the first time ever, he said, "You're too fat for a gastric band," which I thought was a great moment. But there is this new drug from America, which is a daily injection, and it's basically like a chemical gastric band, and it works on the hormones in the stomach. Would you like to try it? It's just been licensed. So I said, yes, please. So I did that. Then I moved on to the weekly, Ozempic. Right. And now I'm on Mounjaro. And I think they are, for people like me who've always struggled with their weight, and, who are sort of entering... I mean, I'm 58, so I'm entering that sniper's alley, heart disease, diabetes. I need to keep the weight off in order to be healthy and to save the NHS lots of money.
I think you look
I think
great.
They're great. I think they're really good. And I've always felt very depressed about my weight problem, and mentally it's made me much happier because now I don't hate myself as physically, because when you're fat, you can get very depressed about it. Well, I did anyway. Not everyone does, but
One very final thing, because we're out of time. In my experience, even when relationships break down in politics, they can come back together.
Yes.
Is it possible for you to have a drink and a fag with Samantha Cameron again?
With Samantha Cameron? I thought you were going to ask about Michael.
No, I'm not bothered about Michael. He's off.
I'd love to have a drink and a fag with Sam, but I think I may have annoyed her quite a lot.
I think she will.
Do you think?
Because I think in the end, time heals. Time heals, and who would not want to have a drink with you?
Well, Or a fag. We're not allowed to have fags anymore, are we? No, I don't smoke, obviously.
Lovely to talk to you. Sarah Vine, how not to be a political wife.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is fantastic insights. Great to see you this morning.